1, 2, 3, 4.
This is Zach Barocas, a poet, a publisher, a cranky cinephile, a photographer, and a stationery shop owner, as he puts it. Oh yeah, and one of my favorite drummers ever, and who I've stolen many ideas from. You might have heard his bands Jawbox, Bells, or the Up On In. This is a narrow-focused interview on what Zach did for my drumming career. Briefly, Zach made his mark in the 90s as an overwhelming force in the DC band Jawbox, which influenced many generations of rock and roll songwriters and bands to come. Zach has played in several bands over the years, but there are too many to dissect here. I believe it was Zach's signature drumming style which made the band Jawbox stand out among their DC peers. Dynamic, passionate, tribal, mathy, punk, yet never letting the grooves get off the rails too far. He still very much played to the song. Jawbox gained some notoriety in the indie music community by becoming one of the only two bands to move from legendary record label Dischord to a major label, Atlantic, for 1994's For Your Own Special Sweetheart. The band had a minor MTV hit with Savory in 1994 and a second single called Cooling Card. As a full lineup consisting of j.robbins, Kim Coletta, Bill Barbot, and Zach, Jawbox had 4 releases. Grippe on Dischord in 1991, Novelty on Dischord in 1992, For Your Own Special Sweetheart on Atlantic 1994, and Jawbox on Tag in 1996. Back to Zach's style and why I love him. Slamming, emotional, jagged, yet sophisticated. To me, he was pulling from percussive gods like Manu Katché, Rob Ellis, Bill Bruford, Stuart Copeland, Manny Elias, Terry Bozzio, and Omar Hakim, but all within the genre of punk or post-punk or this DC aggressive and dissonant Dischord sound. One element of Zach's personality I love is his sense of humor. During the Jawbox heyday, Zach frequently adopted various fake stage names while on tour. He used monikers like Jim Shorts, El Jefe, and even borrowed the name of the Japanese actor Takashi Shimura. I love that. After Jawbox disbanded, Barocas became part of the Up On In. This was a much more experimental, jazz-influenced outfit with just a touch of post-hardcore, based around improv and energy. Barocas currently lives in Brooklyn and plays in the band Bells. Bells has all the elements of prog, punk, indie rock, and 90s DC themes that I miss these days. He also writes poetry and publishes the online literary journal, The Cultural Society. In January 2019, Jawbox announced their official reunion with a 12-date summer tour. This was followed up by various other tours and shows. These days, Zach is always busy writing and creating. Check out his impromptu drum groove video ideas, or dive into his literary work on his website at zachbarocas.com. Or you can shop at he and his wife's stationery store called Measure Twice at measuretwiceshop.com. It seems he's also an animal lover, which we will find out quite early in this interview. Here is one of the most humble geniuses I've ever met, Zach Barocas. Thank you for spending the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure.
So this is kind of, the point is, I briefly talked about my accident and, hey, kitty.
Yeah, he's never far.
We just had some chicken. I raised chickens also. I have two cats, two dogs, chickens, and a dog got into our backyard from a neighbor's dog in our backyard yesterday and kind of tore it apart a little bit. So most of my Sunday was spent 45 minutes away at an emergency chicken doctor. It's pretty stressful. Oh, you froze up. So just going into my uh, musical past and trying to take me out of the darkness, I'm trying to go back and talk to my drum heroes and while I'm doing my therapy and relearning the drums and stuff like that, just to get inspired. And it's been really cool.
Oh,
A lot of support out there.
that's
And
great.
you're definitely one of my inspirational pioneers. So I'm so
Well,
glad you
thank you.
um, accepted. And I'm not a biographer. I'm not probably not going to write your book or Jawbox's book or something like that. This is more like a very narrow focus, if you don't mind. So I
No,
apologize
it's okay.
if I'm not
No,
the crazy fan. It's more
not to worry.
drummy stuff.
I am curious though who you played with in Minneapolis.
So, well, the first band
Are,
I got, yeah,
are
it's
you
called.
from up there?
No, I'm from Seattle, or originally
Oh,
Orange
okay.
County, but the band I was in at the time was from Seattle, and Howie Klein from Reprise signed us. It was called Muzzle, and
Oh, okay. Yeah, that rings a bell.
so we were actually at the Seventh Street entry that night, and then
Okay.
our like A&R guy, whatever, took us into the room where you were playing, and I'm not sure what tour that was that you guys, but I remember Arc Welder was on the same bill.
They were always on the bill
Oh, okay.
whenever we played up there because they couldn't tour much
Yeah.
at that
And
time.
gosh, just the energy. I think we were touring with this band from Ireland called Ash, which just got signed also. So they, stuck us on the same bill and touring around in a van. But man, that was a really weird night in Minneapolis. I had a panhandler who was on a bike come up to me and asked me to write a check, like right after we watched you guys, right across from the Target
That's
Center.
that's what happens in Minneapolis. It's we my wife and I lived up there for a few years.
Yeah.
I don't know about it's coming up on 10 or 15 years ago now, and my brother's there. I went to rehab there
Hmm.
twice when I was a kid. Like I feel like I'll never be free of the Twin Cities.
Wow.
It's a hellhound on my trail.
It's a heavy city for you.
Yeah, that probably it's probably not as heavy as I'd like it to be, but
Yeah.
there it is.
Well, I will say that night, was really impactful for, I
I
know
think it's
my,
probably with Shiner. It was probably us and Shiner and
oh
Arkwell.
yeah. Yeah. That rings a bell. Actually, I got some laminates from the the 930 Club. That's DC, isn't it?
Yep.
930. Yeah. So we did another tour after that, passing through, opening for that band Lush from the UK.
Oh, sure.
Called Lush. They had a lot of odd meter stuff going on too, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Still got the 930 guest thing. Um, but yeah, going back, that band was called Muzzle, and I remember when that band started, when we were rehearsing, there was MTV and there was 120 minutes, and you guys were, I guess I don't know if you consider it your peak, but it's like you're on late night shows, and
Yeah, it
um,
was it was all Savory was the kind of
yeah, that was the one.
that
Um,
peak.
and we we started as a three piece with two guitars, no bass, and we actually toured with like that, and we actually got signed from doing that. We added a bass player later, but I remember, but between, as far as I'm concerned, between listening to Rob Ellis and the PJ Harvey Trio
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and you guys, um, it made like being in an indie rock band. I wanted more freedom like that, and it sounded like you guys had a lot of musical freedom rather than just playing by the book,
Yeah.
especially you on
I think so.
drums. And I wanted to just be in a band like that, listening to those records. And I'm always a late bloomer. Like I went Sweetheart, and then I worked my way back, to see the
Oh, sure.
development and where you guys came from. Most of my influences, I'm always a late bloomer, and I have to research.
All right.
Um, but yeah, like the dissonant guitars and his cool vibrato, and just the way your style was like all over the place. And you get bored back there, playing indie rock, four on the floor, stuff like that, and you want to carve out your own niche. You want to explore, and you want to express your creativity. And the drummers like Rob Ellis and Bosio, and I was into those '80s King Crimson records that were colored. It's like Discipline.
The group with Adrian Belew and
Yeah,
Bruford. Yeah,
really into
and
those.
Those are great records.
That Tin Machine 2 record, for some reason, was like, I was really into that.
I passed on those, but I remember that one being a popular pick.
Yeah, but just the displacement that he used, and even though they're pop songs and stuff, was really creative. Jim McPherson from the Breeders and Jimmy Chamberlain and stuff like that, and then yourself.
Oh,
really,
sure.
Just pulling from all these things, and I'm like, how can I? Here we're rehearsing, and the songs are strong, but how can I carve out my own niche? And I'm gonna pull from you and these other guys with polyrhythms and displacement, even within 4/4, and just odd meter, and just making things interesting. And it really is a timestamp on that era of bands being signed and labels being patient or whatever it was. I mean, it would never happen now, with all the real tape.
I don't know how patient the labels were.
Well, there was artist development departments, and
sure. Well, I think there was a time when for a lot of us who were coming out of scenes that never anticipated any relationship with major labels, ended up with these relationships with major labels. So I think it differs from other, like every generation has a major label. They find something they're into and they go out and get as much of it as they can.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that music,
like Seattle,
yeah, but I think those guys weren't shy about wanting to be on majors, whereas I think in DC, where we were coming from, there was very little talk of that at all.
So you were surprised when A&R guys showed up? Yeah.
I don't know. Well, actually, in the end, I suppose we weren't surprised. Like as it happens, we saw it coming, and we talked to a few. As I recall, it was Epic and Mercury and Atlantic, and by the time they talked to us, it seemed like we already knew people that it happened to. You know what I mean? Like it was sort of in the air. But if I'd quit the band the year we signed. I quit the band early in the year.
Yeah. Huh.
It's like we signed in the summer. I quit in January. I was going to do the last tour I was going to do is with that band Tar from Chicago.
Yeah.
And I got into University of Maryland, and I was going to go to college part-time and work at a bookstore and not be in Jawbox. But then that opportunity showed up. And I thought, well, I'd be stupid to not take this.
Sure.
So I get, but by which I mean it. I think we were like, it was a punk scene. It wasn't just a scene of some kind of music. Like it also had a politics attached to it and a culture attached to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool that no one likes to be labeled, but just growing up in LA, moving to Seattle, understanding there's these scenes or whatever, but if someone said, hey, this band kind of sounds like they're from the DC scene, automatically I have a sound in my head, and that's
sure.
kind of cool or not cool, but I know kind of what to expect. And I did have some friends who were in LA who eventually moved to DC, and there's one band called Blue Tip who a bass player played in.
That was Jason's band.
I went to kindergarten with that bass player Jake.
Oh yeah.
I was so surprised. I never pictured him being a
because Jason, the guitar player from Blue Tip, lives in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So yeah. It's like the way, back then, I don't know, 91, 92.
Yeah.
Like everybody in Olympia, there was this kind of Nation of Ulysses was always hanging out in Olympia, and the Riot Girls were hanging out in DC, and that became its own thing,
Yeah.
Its own little kind of sub scene. But I think most of the time most of that stuff probably does track geographically one way or another.
Yeah.
How would Dave Grohl leaving DC and ending up in Seattle because he quit Scream when they got to Los Angeles. And then Scream became a band called Wool. And
okay.
Dave, of course, went on to be,
yeah,
in Nirvana. And Wool, like the rest of us, got a nicer van when they signed to whatever label they were on.
Yeah.
And you know, Pete Moffat was in that band. I don't know if you know Pete. He
No.
was in Government Issue with Jay, and he was
Oh,
in
okay.
Burning Airlines with Jay.
Okay. And I really liked that band too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I guess, if there's talent that's undeniable, no matter where you move, if you get in a room
Yeah,
with
and
enough
you kind of find
talent.
your people. Yeah, yeah,
I've learned. I mean, I'm a grass is greener guy. A band gets signed tours. I move somewhere else when they break up. Signed tour, move somewhere else when they break up. I get huge auditions. This isn't like to brag, but I'm just saying, like, I've been in
oh,
rooms
sure.
before where you can feel there's so much talent in the room that it's immediate. And then
Yeah,
I've been in rooms before where I'm like, yeah, I'm just kind of, this is cool to jam, but
right,
just staying busy.
right,
Do
right.
you consider that there was in your head? Do you think that there's a DC sound, and this is kind of the elements to a DC sound, or do you think that was just like
Yeah, no, no.
someone
I
threw a
think
label on it?
there was certainly a sound. Like I think for a lot of us, the DC sound was really the Dischord bands.
Mm-hmm.
Although there was certainly a lot of other music in DC. But no, there's certain things that to me, I mean, now seem kind of silly. Like there was a lot of guitar octaves.
Yeah.
That was something like the minute you heard some kind of breakdown, instead of being, big power chords, might resort to octaves of some kind.
It's like another
We
singing
had,
melody. It's
yeah,
another
well,
heart.
if there was singing in the first place, I
Yeah.
think there was a lot of like, I guess I tend to think of the music that didn't sound like DC music, um, like Lungfish,
Mm-hmm.
who came up from Baltimore or came down from Baltimore. Nothing sounded like them really. There he is.
It's okay. I love it.
Oh, he's intrepid. Uh, see if I can. That might work. Probably not, but you never know.
Yeah.
But Longfish was kind of, was an outside sound. Shudder to Think was certainly an outside sound, and had those elements. I mean, you wouldn't think they were from somewhere else, but they seemed kind of far out in
Yeah.
terms of the other stuff. Fire Party, and then before me, there was like 9353 and Beefeater, some bands that really kind of, I don't know what they sounded like, But there's certainly there was an idea about SGs and Marshalls,
Mm-hmm.
and we all kind of cranked our snares up, and excuse me, and I think particularly after Fugazi, tempos slowed. We were all a little more comfortable with that. I came from Rochester, New York, which was a fine place to play shows as a kid, but it wasn't it wasn't necessarily in the I didn't feel I had also quit music before I moved to DC.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling like, it wouldn't have occurred to me at 20 to try to be inventive or to even look for that. So by the time I became friendly with all the people down there, used to go down to see shows and to visit and for protests and stuff. By the time I moved down there, I felt like I was looking for these, like I was so glad to be around these people, who were much smarter than me and much more sophisticated than me.
I can't
Not
imagine
just
that
with the
according to your
music.
website.
Oh, well, this is a long time ago,
Yeah.
And it was Kim and Jay and a handful of other people there. So by the time I joined the band, I felt a lot of pressure to be a part of that, to be a
Yeah.
part of like I think being part of the music was like the last thing I did there.
Pressure. It's interesting. You weren't like,
Oh,
I've got
sure.
to do that. You go into a club and it's like, I have to do that. It's my mission. You felt more pressure to be involved.
Oh yeah,
Huh.
absolutely.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, it was like before I was in the band, I was a fan,
Yeah.
so I felt like I had to go in and try to be at least as good as Adam, Adam Waite, who had been the original drummer, and had to get past being the new guy and my own hangups that I brought with me anyway. And I think at first it didn't take me long to find something else to do in the band,
Yeah.
to bring something to the band.
That's interesting that you say you had to prove yourself, because like some writers I saw like described you as like defining or heavily defining the Jawbox sound, not completely, but mentioning your name, it's like, oh yeah, that really kind of carved out their niche in this genre that's going on right now. So obviously you had like this whatever magic that you had, or you've proven yourself to this level that you've reached this inspirational level where you're motivating other drummers.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, and I'm grateful for. I would never have seen anything like that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly as a middle-aged guy, like the tour we did in 2019. The number of men who wanted their daughter's picture taken with me because she's a drummer was notably high. Like
Wow.
That happened to me several times in the course of those shows, to say nothing of the other 50-year-old guys who were like, can I get my picture taken with you? Or,
Sure.
or you were a big influence on my playing. And then my son or my daughter now plays and they're into it. And also, other drummers who are working drummers, people like yourself, who kind of pop up, people in other areas of music who pop up and say that it was important to them. Yeah. Somehow what we did. And
it's a launching pad.
I don't know what to say to that except thanks. I mean it
well, you steal things. It is the highest compliment, even if it's into one song. I was talking with Adam from Jawbreaker not too long ago, and I think just in one, because right after the Muzzle thing, and probably sometime around when you guys broke up, I started a one-man band thing called Priss, where I sang and played guitar, and I played all the instruments and stuff. And I definitely stole timing, stop, start, displacement intros and stuff like that from you guys. And, I probably wrote 3 whole songs out of a song they had called Accident Prone, just grabbing, hooks, and it was just a whirlwind of, especially stuff that was going on in Seattle at the time, which was very clean, 4 on the floor. Right. There was more sweaters. It was definitely post-grunge. Things were mellowing out, and I wasn't ready to mellow out yet. And it was more like disjointed and kind of ear candy stuff. And so that kept me rolling. Like the palette was like, or the canvas was completely clean. Like, how can I freak people out? How can I'm gonna grab from, your records and.
Well, I think you make a list, right? Almost like when I started I also, after I quit Jawbox, I was never going to play music again. It was kind of a recurring theme for several years there. That whenever I would quit a band, I would swear I was never doing it again,
Yeah.
But here I ended up forming a band called the Up On In. That was like everything Jawbox wasn't. Like we had no singer. It was effectively drum-led music. The idea of the songs was that they would never repeat a given idea. So like however long it took to unfold an idea, that's how long the song was.
Wow.
And we assumed too that should never take more than 4 minutes. Like there were all these kind of rules in there. And we made one good record. Like we had a relatively short lifespan, but I think we were able to kind of do what we meant to do, because there was this idea going in of like, well, we don't want to do that, whatever that thing was.
That makes sense to me. Clean the palette, like coming off of, I was in the screamo scene, I guess you can call them the early aughts, and you tour with these festivals, which are with 20 other bands that sound just like you. And before the tour, you're like, we're one of a kind, and you get up there and everyone's screaming louder, everyone's hitting the drums harder, everyone's playing faster. Right. And you're just like, okay, I get it.
Right.
And when I get home, I'm going to be listening to a lot of Carpenters. I'm going to be digging into my ABBA collection. I'm going to be listening to a lot of, Tolkien audio books or just something that completely not that,
Not that,
Now I know kind of, how to play the game, how to make a living. And then I got to balance it somehow. So yeah, I totally get it. I do get very detailed, and I'm really sentimental about how I learned to play and what records I was listening to. And I don't want to make any offense, but I think your style, for me, was like the perfect combination of Bosio and this guy, Manu Katché, the Peter Gabriel's drummer. Yeah. The way he used his tribal toms, and Manny Elias, this guy from Tears for Fears.
Yep.
Not necessarily. If you go back to the Tears for Fears older stuff, there's a lot of polyrhythm things, a lot of tom work going on, and then a little bit of Tim Alexander, along with straight ahead punk stuff, and that was the mix. And I was like, some people are dedicated to that. No, this is me. I'm jazz guy, and I will never waver from that. But no, you were playing for the band also. The song is important too. So you were like the perfect mix of all that. So how did that come back? How did you? I mean, did you have lessons? Did you listen to records? And
I took lessons I started as a kid, on snare drum in the school band. And then I marched, we had a marching band.
Yeah.
Which looking back on must have been horrible. It was a bunch of 10-year-olds marching with, like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but it was fun, 5th and 6th grade. And I got my first drum set, when I was 10 and 11. And it was a 3-piece with a non-working hi-hat and one cymbal. It was a kick snare rack. And I had a band at that time. I was taking lessons and had a band. My band was called the Rebels. And it was with my brother's Dungeons & Dragons cohort. They needed a drummer for their band. And I was in there, they saw the drum set in the basement. So they were like, let's get Vic's brother to do this. Mm-hmm. And it was cool. Our set was The Who's Meaty, Beady, Big and Bouncy. Like we just played the songs from that record. And at that time I was taking lessons from a guy named John Squirta, who has probably passed away and was probably not remarkable except to kids like me. But I thought he was a wonderful teacher. And the gist of it was, for the first few or several months I was with him, I didn't touch a drum set. Like I played everything on my lap. So if you can picture it, like your left thigh is your snare, your left knee is the rack, your right thigh is the floor, and then you have a kick. And that's where we'd sit there and play like that. And I'd learn patterns like that.
That's what Martin said at Pretenders. That's how he did it when he started.
Yeah, it was like I had to earn it, to get behind a kit. And he had this little studio, it was a Hochstein School of Music, which is still there in Rochester. And Rochester's a music town because the Eastman School of Music is there, among other things. But so like, I think Steve Gadd and Jeff Tyzik and all those studio jazz guys, Chuck Mangione, came out of that scene.
It's Dr. Gadd, by the way.
Yeah, and that, no doubt.
These days.
But he was local. He was local when I was a kid. But so that was, I kind of took lessons and then immediately started in a band. And then my father and my brother and I moved to Virginia outside of DC. And that was a disaster, more or less, except I made friends with one kid who, a guy named Kevin McKendry, who's a piano player. Still a piano player, like plays for a living. Probably might be the best musician I'll ever know.
Wow.
It's entirely possible. But I met him and we formed a band. And subsequent to that, I'd been taking lessons, but I quit them because I was playing with this guy. But we were 12, you know what I mean? Like we took it very seriously, but in the end we were still children. And then I moved back to Rochester a couple years later and lived with my mom, and I had gotten a drum set for my bar mitzvah, which was the set I used on Sweetheart, which is now a house kit at Jay's studio in Baltimore. But then I just sort of played the way I thought everyone played. Mm-hmm. Like we'd skip school and jam, or smoke a bunch of dope and jam, but there was a lot of like just playing, looking back on it. Endless variations on Voodoo Child Slight Return, because the Steve Ray Vaughan record had just come out, and
Is it me or did you start? It seemed like you sat at least at the backstage level watching you or the stuff you done on TV. You sit rather high.
No, I didn't at first, but I came to that. Yeah, kind of probably probably 93, late 92 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I developed tendonitis of some kind in my forearms, and it seemed to be related to reaching up to crashes.
Interesting.
And trying to get as much, it's a lot harder to get that kind of power that high, and so I lowered everything and sat up about 6 more inches, and could lean into pretty much anything. It was much easier to hit harder. Given that I have terrible technique, I have friends who can hit really hard with their wrists. I don't really have that.
Yeah, less injuries that way.
But if I'm hitting from the elbow, it's much easier if it's low.
I mean, concerning that in the vibe of this channel, was that the only thing you had to go through in your career in all the bands you played in with tendonitis, or do you remember any other injuries that you had to come back from?
Oh no, there was I tore my ACL right before we started touring on the self-titled record.
Kick drum leg?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And in fact, in the Cornflake Girl video, we did a video for that song.
Yeah.
I'm not even miming my kick drum. My leg we took the batter head off because I had an immobilizer on it. Stuck my leg into the drum. So it looked like I was, sitting behind my bass drum. And that's an injury that still I didn't deal with it very well. Meaning I didn't take care of it very well. And it's still a problem sometimes. I did several years later have the surgery finally.
Did you rely on meds?
Tore it again. No, I mean, maybe. It's tough to say. A lot of Aleve before shows back then, but I took to drinking it was a drinking accident, such as those exist. But I didn't drink I never drank before I played. Right. So it wouldn't surprise me if some of my drinking immediately after the show had something to do with that. But I certainly wasn't aware of it, But when I tore it the second time, it was a different tear. There were 2 partial tears.
So like a fall down the stairs or something?
Off a curb.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to make it out of that one without the surgery. So, but that was also during the time of the second tear. I wasn't really playing. And then I don't know. I think there's sort of 2 different kinds of what we might call injury. One of which is the traumatic event. Yeah. In your case, obviously the crash, and trying to. There's a lot to put back together after that, and that might also be like, I feel some of that still from having been in New York on 9/11. I'll never get over that. Wow. Yeah. But I have the comfort of knowing that there's, a few million people who were in the exact same boat, and none of us is ever going to get over that.
Have you ever heard of EMDR? EMDR therapy. It's a form of psychotherapy that has to do with, it's trauma based. A lot of PTSD soldiers go through it. It's basically a light that you follow that goes back and forth while you're being counseled, and it kind of cracks that trauma shell and gets in there, and you deal with certain, what my therapist called lily pads, which were scary memories or something like that, and you crack it, and it's something that has to do with the left and right eye movement that makes it easier to dig into that stuff and gets rid of all your defense mechanisms and things. Yeah. So I've been doing that. I was doing that pre-crash, but she definitely jumped into the scene.
Well, that's sort of what I was getting to, was that I don't think my knee was traumatic. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a pain in the ass. I didn't, but I don't even know if I was 26 yet. You know what I mean? Like it was something that happened that had to be dealt with. I was told not to drink, so I stuck to beer. It was like I had no concept of what was going on, except I was very clear with my orthopedist that I had 4 weeks to get to Albuquerque. I had to play a show in Albuquerque, and I had to play it well. So how were we going to do that? So I had this kind of heavy regimen of PT that I stuck to for exactly 4 weeks. But once we got to Albuquerque,
And this stuff.
what is that?
It's the Miracle Cream.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've tried it all. This stuff doesn't
can
stink.
imagine.
It's not sticky. It
Right.
doesn't. It's not hot, and it works immediately. You can put it anywhere on your body. And I always do pre-show on tour. Never leave
Right.
it. Never leave it. So this
Send
one's
me
called
the
Natural.
link.
Yeah, I will. I've been sending some dudes after interviews the links. There's 2 of them. Yeah.
But so that I guess I'm driving that is the injury
Yeah.
isn't necessarily traumatic. I was much more. And the same thing happened. A similar thing happening on the tour in 2019, and somewhere between Philly and Brooklyn, I tore my rotator cuff in my left shoulder. Well, it's no surprise. Like if I see clips of what I was doing at those shows,
Just
like
overworked.
of course I did something, like. But what we did was I went to a massage therapist, a sports massage therapist, and tried that. And then I got a heating pad and an ice pack, and would heat it before the show and ice it after the show. And I didn't really think of it as. Never once crossed my mind that I wasn't going to play the shows, or something.
Right.
I really thought like, well, if I can get through the shows, I can deal with this after. Knowing that the tour was finite, and I was talking to my wife today because I've been having this pain in my neck, and of course it's not my neck, it's my shoulder. For the rest of my life, it's going to be my shoulder.
Stem from somewhere else. It just gathers injuries along the way. And the pain
and I guess I think particularly if you play music, particularly as drummers, where you can't fake hitting hard on drums, where like you can turn up or get effects or something for your guitar, or obviously singers start to, even if they're screaming, they become much quieter.
You can in the studio. I've heard some black metal bands where in the studio, man, they're slamming, but you see them play live and it's what?
Right.
A lot of trigger based stuff. Yeah.
That genre brings its own baggage, I suppose. But for the rest of us who don't have the benefit of any of that,
just all emotion. You can't help yourself.
You just wail on it, and there it goes. And I wouldn't trade it. I mean, my thought about it is that certainly by this age, I probably would have hurt my shoulder doing something else.
Yeah.
Might as well be. I'd rather it be that than pain in the bathroom.
Absolutely. Hey, you don't have to go down this road if you want to, but you mentioned the rehab in Minneapolis, and I'm a little familiar with that kind of stuff. Did you just go in once, or was it an ongoing thing through the years that you finally tackled?
That's probably truer. As a kid, it seemed to be at the root of a lot of other problems I was having. Mm-hmm. So I went, the first time I went was really like a normal, I think what most of us would understand as a kid going to rehab. There have been several meetings between my mother and my school, and getting my father on the phone, and like everybody was kind of together on that. The second time was a year and a half later, and nobody took it as seriously, I think, because it was so soon after the first one. On the other hand, I went to an adult facility, which was a very different experience than going to an adolescent facility. And after that, I stayed sober for 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
I was active. I was in a program for probably 6 or 7 of those.
Great.
And then later decided to start drinking. I didn't drink as a kid.
Yeah.
Then I started drinking, and that was very quickly serious trouble.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't take long.
No, I think for some of us it doesn't, and that my pattern was to kind of kind of hit the wall after a couple of years, and then stay sober for a few months or a year, and then start again. And I did that for a while. And then once I got married, that wasn't practical anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I became like a pretty serious binge drinker. Like when I drank, it would get hairy.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily drink all the time. And then at the end, of course, I was like every other drunk, and I was just drunk when I could be. And
Yeah.
and that was in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was pretty sure at that time we were planning to move back here to New York. And I thought, I can't be like this in New York. Like I can barely hang on to my marriage in Minneapolis. Like, how am I going to do this? So I quit drinking a month.
At the time? Yeah.
No. And so I've been sober since we moved back here in 2008.
Great.
And and then the next, I quit smoking cigarettes 6 years ago. That was the other thing
That's huge.
I came to let go of,
Although what I've been hearing about Corona lately is, I don't know. I might have to take up smoking. Some weird studies going on.
It was harder than quitting drinking.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of impulsive. Like I decided I was going to do it, and then the next day did it, and kind of lost my mind for about a year.
Wow.
Well, I think like everything else, I started smoking when I was 12 or 13. And, by the time I was 45, like I was smoking for all kinds of reasons, so to take that away, like all of that other stuff came up, all of those other kind of, all the other issues or whatever I was dealing with by smoking.
I'm naked. Where do I put that energy? I don't have my protective shield.
Well, no, like nicotine, it's a very powerful drug, and it served me well up to a point, but I don't know. I think it's easier to be, I feel like I'm on the other side of a lot of this stuff now.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, no, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, but I try to remain sensitive to people who are not.
Yeah.
Because I also appreciate that this doesn't happen quickly.
It takes some maintenance.
And not everybody's, and not everybody's working with the same advantages or the same, I have a very supportive family, for one thing. Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
And that's across the board. Like whether it's my sobriety or my music, everybody's pretty excited about both of those things.
And I'm glad you're still able to do it. You survived a lot.
Yeah, so far.
Just to jump back to the music just a little bit, going through the catalog, it sounded to me, I'm probably crazy, but it sounded to me like your last record, it sonically is the most expensive, like production-wise, even though, I don't know, maybe it was your peak, probably the record before that was your peak. Is there a difference in the production that you detected while you were going through it, like why it sounded maybe to me more shiny than Sweetheart?
Well, I think Ted Nicely, who produced Sweetheart, I think my guess is in fact Sweetheart's a much slicker record. Jay and Bill spent a lot more time making that record than we spent on Jawbox. And Kim and I had nothing to, like, we went in and cut for 4 days and then left, and that was it. We never went back. And it took another 4 weeks or something of recording guitars and vocals to get that to sound like that. But I think it was supposed to sound like it didn't take that much. Right. Something, Whereas with John and Yellow, with whom we did the last record, John's much more of a very conventional rocker in his practice. I think, like, I think the kinds his toolkit is a pretty rock oriented toolkit, and I think he also tends to, for a band like us, what he experienced was us playing together.
Yeah.
So he wanted us to, we cut as much as we could live. I think there was, every song had at least some of the first take on every instrument, you know. It wouldn't surprise me either, actually, if we even kept some of the scratch vocals, just because John, that's his taste. I think it cost less money than Sweetheart, as I remember.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big changes on the drums, anyway, was at some point in the mixing. I don't remember this exactly. Jay might remember this better. But I had John pull the room mics out, and then went with that sound, which I don't think I would make that decision now.
A little more intimate.
Well, except the music isn't, so I'm not sure it was. But what I was kind of putting my foot down about was I didn't want it to sound like Sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it wouldn't. I'm sure it wouldn't have anyway. But you know, What does that mean? What does that mean to you? What does not sounding like Sweetheart mean to you? Oh, I think, well, Sweetheart I thought was very roomy and was probably informed by a lot of what Jay was into with music coming out of Chicago. A lot of those bands were probably, you know, recording with Brad Wood and Idful or Steve and Bob. I think their studio would have still been at the house, or we recorded at the house, but the kinds of sounds that were coming out of Chicago.
Did you record with Steve Albini?
No, we did a 7-inch with Bob.
Okay.
Was our kind of token. You know, we had to do something with them, and so we did the 7-inch with those guys. Okay. Which was fun, and it was so fast. Mm-hmm. I think we recorded and mixed 2 songs in a day. It was like, wow. It was like 1990, you know.
Efficient.
Well, it was we must have been on tour. There's no other reason we would have been in Chicago. Yeah. So we probably played the night before or after, you know, somewhere.
That was your pre-production, right? Playing live shows.
Yeah. Well, and that was true anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was sort of the way we handled most of that.
So when you brought these,
I didn't.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, so when you are you bringing ideas into the band? Are you going off of Jay's guitar riff? How do you? Because I mean, it's not you're not common drum beats. So I'm wondering if like you have this groove in your head, like you have on your website, and you're like, hey, I'd like to present this, and they write stuff off of that, or is it?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of that. But that could have started, like Motorist was even like that, which isn't a beat that I think I was distinguishing itself particularly. Mm-hmm. But I think by the time the band gets around it, like I think at its best, you know, when one presents it, first of all, a drummer should be able to bring a beat to their band.
Sure.
Right. That's a given. Like I couldn't be in a band where that's not available to me.
Gina brings in, we got the beat, and they say, nah.
Well, I think if, you know, I think in a lot of situations, like say in Jawbox in its original formation and after Bill joined, I don't think anybody thought about it. You know, Jay was the songwriter. So Jay would bring songs and Kim and Adam would find something to play on them. And then that's how it would go. And yeah, I'm sure there were things that changed, you know, accents and things you pick up along the way because somebody has an idea. But basically the songs were Jay's songs, and they were done when he got there. With us, there was this element of just playing, of jamming, you know, coming up with a beat or coming up with a part and playing it for a couple hours to see where it ends up. And to me, that's what you did. I mean, I came from a background of doing that. And a lot of that kind of playing starts with a beat, you know, and it has to be a beat that you can play for a while.
Right.
Or you have to learn it while you're playing it. I couldn't, like, Livid was a weird beat. Mm-hmm. Because at the time I was trying to sound like I had, like there was percussion with me. So I couldn't, first I thought I could have played that for more than 6 or 8 bars before I had to start over,
Oh,
that kind of flip. There's a
cut and
fulcrum,
paste.
Yeah. But you can't do that in the basement. So,
No.
So I think a lot of it did come out of those beats, but I think also because the whole spirit of the thing changed, I don't know that more of it came out of the beats than other instruments,
Mm-hmm.
but it became a process where all the instruments were contributing along the way. And my last band, Bells, was so much like that we decided we wouldn't declare a song finished until everyone was happy with what they were playing. So some of those songs took a very long time, usually because of me saying, I could do that other thing, or, but I think by the time it was done, like, we were all very much into what was happening. And that was true of Jawbox as well. Like, towards the end, there might've been a couple songs. I don't know that we ever really played Empire of One live.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of wrote that one in the studio. His Only Trade was always a mess, but it was kind of supposed to be a mess. I don't know if you know that song or not, but some of the stuff on the last record was kind of, I liked it. I thought it became much more challenging to play.
Yeah, I don't know him by name, but I've listened to that last one a few times past few days.
Trying to hear all of that through a monitor,
right,
while you're playing it.
Yeah.
It was always almost too much, which was just fine. And I experienced that again on the reunion tour, like everything just being so loud. Like, there's no quiet parts. There's no,
when you're recording this complicated stuff, is it click based? Is everything live?
Almost all of it's to a click.
Mm-hmm.
Savory, interestingly, was not to a click.
Yeah.
Because I still can't. Like, that song's got like at least 3 tempos.
Yeah, but it made it even more impactful when you're playing that live, and
well, that was Ted's decision. Yeah.
I don't know if you're doing that just because you're so used to playing together, or if you used eye contact, towards the end where everything stops. Yeah. Everything goes blank.
No, we just kind of know it at this point. You can feel. You can, having played those songs so many times.
Yeah.
I think all of us can anticipate. And as because you're a musician, you can fudge it a little. Like, you get a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Because everyone's watching the singer. Or they're distracted by some other element of the show. So
and it's never going to really be on the one, because guitar players are going to strike their strings at a different speed. So there's always going to be a little bit of gray.
Yeah. As little as possible.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about with you guys, and the creativity that you all bring in, especially you in the drum beats, because I've been in bands before where, and you're like a genius. You're a poet, and you have a stationery shop with your wife.
Yep.
Is that correct? And so you're constantly full of ideas. But I've been in bands before where it's like, because I write songs and I play guitar and I play piano and I like to compose. But I've been in bands before where it's like, no, too many cooks in the kitchen, too many ideas. We're gonna do it like this. Put a limit. And I think bands go through that, and maybe they're getting more popular. And if they don't edit themselves, sooner or later a producer is going to step in and like, look, there's just too many choruses, or look, it's too busy.
We went through that with John. John, no doubt we learned from Maniello some things about songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had handled much of that intuitively up to that point, or John was, because he came from a kind of more conventional background, he would say, like, no, play it again. Like, play that thing twice. Why wouldn't you play it twice? And we'd be like, well, we already played it. Like, why would we play it again? And he'd say, no, do it twice, or you need one more change, one more key change before you get to the chorus. And we would try it, and he was right. Like, they were good ideas. But I think that was a band, though, that always welcomed more ideas.
Yeah.
Like if it was from another member, if it was from a producer, like we were pretty open to anybody else saying, "Oh, how about this?" You know.
Okay. Yeah. And then there's these, I don't know, what I discovered is the bigger the money gets, sometimes you think the record's done and you come back and wait, what was that edit?
Right.
I
Like we didn't do that.
I
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But then
I
you
can
just
imagine.
learn to play the game, and it's, you want to do the career and you want to do all the, you're living your dream. So it's like, you're only going to fuss so much, and
Sure.
they have all these Grammy awards and stuff. So what are you going
Well,
to,
I mean, I think that's, I've never been, I don't think I've ever had a temperament for playing that way, for playing professionally that way. Uh, and it took me a long time to understand that, I think. Um, but in the end, like I'd much rather be, uh, or I don't know, I shouldn't say that. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. Like I can play what I want. Somehow through all of this, I became something of a kind of respected elder in in a certain corner of the music world, and
it's a good place to
uh,
be.
yeah, I have really talented fans, and my bandmates are talented. Like I don't, none of this is what I thought it was going to be, but I couldn't tell you what I thought it was going to be anyway. You know.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're still being musical, and I'm glad you're busy. You're a Renaissance man. Can we point people towards your stationery store or whatever your passion is right
Oh
now?
yeah,
Super fun.
it's probably easiest is just to go to zachbarocas.com. It all ends up there one way or another.
Yeah. Okay.
Like there's links to the shop, and I've been trying to post.
What's it called again?
Oh, it's just zachbarocas.com.
Oh, the stationery shop.
Oh, the stationery shop's called Measure Twice,
Measure twice.
and there's a link to it at my site.
Okay.
The website for that is measuretwiceshop.com.
Awesome. Well, once again, to circle all the way back,
Yeah.
learning that stuff that I fell in love with you guys in the first place has been really good therapy for me, because
Oh, good.
I'm about 70% back, and I'm really just going after my quick twitch stuff. All the polyrhythm stuff is okay, but I'm slower on my left side, and my right ankle I've got drop foot, so I'm really trying to work through that with electricity and blood restriction, tourniquets, and all this weird stuff. Like, no one really ever wants to see me on the drum kit practicing. It looked pretty scary, but I am improving. And with
Good.
the stuff that you played on your catalog, you're helping me improve. So I really
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
really
Glad
appreciate
to
your
hear it.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you spending the time. I'll send you a link when this is all done, and it's called
Yeah.
Drum Recovery Network on YouTube.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You might pass stuff on there if you want to.
Yeah,
Peace to you and your
I will.
family and good health.
And to you, I look forward to hearing from you.
All right. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Brooke. Take care.